Heading into the bye week, the Bruins have a lot of good buzz after their second win of the season. Can they continue that throughout the rest of the season? Maybe. Good vibes into 25? Let's hope so.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. All you got to do is place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And where we get started today is taking a look at this back half of UCLA's 24 schedule for DESHAUN Foster and company, right? What was a dismal 1-11 output, preseason projection 3-9 by most, hopeful by UCLA aspects in the optimistic Bruins' eyes, like mine, that this team could make a bowl, and just about nearly all those outputs could be correct. We don't really know where they're going to go, right? Was it a fluke that they beat Rutgers and they were just beaten up and they beat a porous Hawaii team and the Bruins go 2-10? Do they get another win on the schedule? Which would be, I think, considering how the Bruins non-conference into Big Ten play schedule looked, 4 straight teams that are in the top 13 of the country, and then you nickel and dime a win in here, there, then okay, that would be okay. But the true optimistic view is what DESHAUN Foster is preaching to his team. I want to get us to a bowl, get in contention for bowl eligibility with that 6-win marker. All right. This is a team that in the preseason, I thought for them to make a bowl, they would have to go close to 4-5-1 down the stretch to have a good chance at 6-7 wins. And then we saw the first part of the schedule and the first part of how they played with the eye test, and it didn't look like it fit the part that this team could make a bowl. It might be one of the worst teams ever at UCLA. I'm not sure they are the worst team, but they have a team that has difficulty scoring the football, moving the football, and they're not as talented on defense as they were a year ago, with a staff that is largely pushed together after Chip Kelly left, and DESHAUN Foster, who has clearly shown a hiccup or two as a first-year head coach. And yet, from the reports from practice, they're hyped. They're buzzing, right? This is a team that put up 35 points. Their quarterback threw for nearly 400 yards without their top 2 receivers being involved. Then make that without a running game, and there's room for growth heading into the back half of the schedule. Let's look at that, right? Let's look at who they got coming up. Okay, UCLA goes to Nebraska. That is never an easy place to play. Never. Although UCLA 11 years ago did get the win at Nebraska. The last win was an ugly Foster Farms Bowl loss to Nebraska. I think it was in Santa Clara, whatever it was called. Or maybe it was Arizona, one of those two. The Bruins lost to a Nebraska team that had 5 wins. Embarrassing. So where does UCLA go from here? Nebraska that just lost 56-7. I've had this gut feeling. I haven't done a lot of analytical search on Nebraska yet, but kind of seeing how they played, how they blew that game to Illinois where they should have won. And then they were 5-1 heading into that Indiana game in Bloomington. And the Hoosiers just boat raced them. And they only played a half with Curtis Rourke before he hurt his thumb and is out 1 to 2 weeks. So that means their top quarterback only played a half and they blitzed the Cornhuskers 56-7. UCLA, I'd like to say, fared a little better. It was still ugly, but the Bruins, after a bye, dropped their first play. They dropped the football on the first play of the game. If they don't do that at Nebraska, then I'd like to say UCLA won't be down 56-7. Okay. Nebraska, they have been hit by close game luck. They've been hit hard. They've come in hard times. When it's a one-score game, Nebraska, whoever's the coach, whoever's playing quarterback, seems to fall on the wrong side of history whenever they're playing teams. They have a true freshman quarterback, a coach in Matt Rule that's doing a lot of good things over there. But I just had this weird inkling that some true freshman quarterback, a veteran quarterback of Garbers, if the offense fixes things and calls a couple of good plays, gets a little healthier, and then Nebraska doesn't rush the passer as well, then, and that's not saying that if they just don't in that game necessarily, the Bruins could be in line for a shocking road victory. What are we going to say? Nebraska is the toughest place they're going to play. UCLA's played at LSU, they played at Penn State, and then there's Nebraska. You're telling me that the closest Big Ten opponent that's not a West Coast team, right? One of the closest Big Ten teams that is not the Washington, Oregon, or SCs of the world. You're telling me that UCLA is going to be afraid of heading into an environment? No. And then they got a week to rest, a week to get healthier. I like the chances. I'm not saying UCLA is going to win at this point. There's still too many things to see how healthy they can get, what Nebraska looks like in a week from now. That's a game that I don't think will be as ugly as we would have thought a few weeks ago. That's a reasonable opportunity for UCLA in the middle of the day on the Big Ten Network in 12:30 Pacific to start the month of November, where the Bruins can prove that the Rutgers game wasn't a fluke. And they don't necessarily have to win that Nebraska game to prove everybody wrong, but a good showing. And then UCLA can be like, all right, that stretch was large in part due to the schedule. You play Iowa. Iowa just lost to Michigan State. In Michigan State, you look at the record, maybe a little bit ahead of schedule with Jonathan Smith, a guy maybe UCLA could have hired if they got rid of Chip Kelly much sooner. And he's doing it with a much younger, more inexperienced quarterback. And they put 30 on Iowa, which is tough to do sometimes. And they held Caleb Johnson, one of the best Big Ten backs, to under 100 yards rushing. And UCLA tends to do better against teams that don't really know how to throw the football, all right? Now, Kaliak Manis did have some good throws against UCLA, and the Bruins made him look really good at times when the secondary couldn't cover and the team couldn't rush the quarterback. Iowa, I'm not necessarily sold on them being able to throw the ball all over the yard at UCLA in the Rose Bowl on a Friday night. That's my hesitation. Friday night for homecoming. All right. Is this high school homecoming on a Friday night? That's just how it's had to play out this year. UCLA, Iowa, that's a dangerous game where the offense is ugly. It could be an ugly 23-7 Iowa. That's a game that I think is winnable because Iowa can't seemingly figure out offense despite offenses evolving multiple times since the last time they had a good offensive team. Washington beat Michigan, but that win also isn't as good. Washington then, I believe, got blown out by Iowa, and then Washington also lost to Rutgers. Something Washington couldn't do. That's what UCLA did on the road at Rutgers. Now, Washington should have beaten Rutgers, but they didn't. And the fact that they proved that under first-year coach at the moment, Jed Fish at UW, that in Seattle on November 15th is a tough game. Okay, it's a tough game on the road. It's a primetime Big Ten game. Bruins get back-to-back Friday games. And then UCLA finishes the season off with back-to-back home games. USC, where the Trojans, they'll get up 14 on the team. They'll get up double figures, but they have not been able to hold off those opponents. They could easily be 5-1 as they could be 1-5 at this moment. They are crumbling, and their season, when it comes to postseason chances for the CFP, that's dead. Respectability in year one in the Big Ten, unless they go on a big run, probably dead as well. Man, what did Chip Kelly do in his first year, even in a 3-9 campaign? He went out and beat USC at the Rose Bowl. DeShaun Foster can bring in a lot of goodwill from this UCLA fan base with what looks to be more and more like a winnable game at home against USC. All right, it's been a few years since the Bruins have been able to knock off the Trojans at the Rose Bowl. They've had more success in recent years in those odd numerical years, going to USC and winning the last two games at the Coliseum. And I'd like to see the Bruins change that and get a dub. I think, what is it, the first time at home since 2018? They haven't beaten the Trojans at the Rose Bowl since 2018. Let's go change that and get a dub. I'm not afraid of Lincoln Riley and USC at this moment. They can go do things that UCLA can't offensively, a little more consistently. Yes, D'Anton Lynn was in the room last year. He knows how to maybe handle things. But I think Eric Bieniemy can out-game plan a D'Anton Lynn once. Yes, hopefully. And then you finish the year against Fresno State. you finished the year against Fresno State, which if you are a true UCLA fan, that is equally as important as a game as all those, all right? You understand that UCLA cannot lose to Fresno State again at home. And it seems like, other than that Jake Haener year, Fresno has been getting UCLA in down years every single time. Just whenever they're on the schedule, it's just a poor year. Other than 2021, when they blew it to a decent Fresno State team. Not a team that won the Mountain West that year, but a team that Jake Haener went down the field and the Bruins couldn't play 2-minute defense or a minute defense. Whatever. You know that Fresno State game is equally as important as the rest. It's not the big name. It's not going to draw the crowd that USC or Iowa or any of those Big Ten teams will. But that post-Thanksgiving Saturday night is equally as important like it would be when they played Stanford or Cal, and they're now playing a Central Valley team in Fresno State turning into a Pac-12 team. The Bruins can't lose. DeShaun Foster has to know you can't lose. But those are games where UCLA, I think, actually might not be favored against Fresno State. That's way far in advance. That's a game prior to beating Rutgers and how they've been playing, prior to Minnesota. I thought they might not get another win and they might not be favored. Everything going their way, there could be 1 to 2 more wins. And if you're really viewing this thing optimistically, maybe a third if the Bruins play well. And I do think they can play well. But then again, as we saw in the Minnesota game, you have to close games out, which is why I'm a little hesitant to go out and go claiming for a bowl. But I see another 1 or 2 wins, hopefully, here. That's optimistic. That's my optimistic rose-colored lenses on. But I do see it. It just takes one bad week of UCLA forgetting how to play ball to make us think, all right, whatever. But hey, expectations, there is another win on the schedule, and maybe, probably 2. And it's not that far-fetched to dream of more. Now, they got to play well enough to earn all those victories. But on an opponent versus opponent week-by-week basis, the Bruins aren't overmatched as completely as they were during those 4 games earlier in the season. Now, the trenches will be a struggle for sure. Absolutely. But now, how does UCLA handle this? That's only for time to tell, and for how well they execute, rest, and recover during the bye week. Next, we are talking about what is it going forward for the quarterbacks, and how do you decipher what to do with Justyn Martin? Maybe not in just 24, but in 25 as we keep going in the Locked On UCLA podcast. Hey, UCLA fans and NFL fans, you can keep the season going big with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So we get a hunch in the middle of the game. You can check out the latest stats if you like play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Let's rewind that one more time. Your first $5 bet can guarantee you getting started with $200 in bonus bets. Check it out on America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. Check it out, FanDuel.com. Cruising on here in the Locked On UCLA podcast, Zach with you guys. All right, the Justyn Martin question, right? And it's not necessarily about good or bad or Ethan Garbers. This is what UCLA's future is, I think, going to look like. Even if it's not now or if it's in 2 weeks, how does UCLA give Martin more experience heading into the end of this season, into 2025? And I've clearly on this podcast been in the Ethan Garbers camp. I think Garbers is a little more seasoned. You live with a couple of mistakes, but I think he is the better of the 2 quarterbacks. And if you think about it, a complete different scheme. Martin, I think, was already a little bit of a raw product to begin with, and that led to a simplification of the offense that led to a little bit more success against Penn State than one would have thought. I do think there's a higher ceiling for Martin in the future, and that future is coming sooner now that you look at your top 2025 commit, Madden Iamaleava. He's coming in from Long Beach Poly now after starting the season at Warren with 1 game played in his high school senior season. and is not eligible to play at Long Beach Poly, I think, in any sport, especially football. Crushing that UCLA's biggest quarterback commit for next year and their biggest receiver commit. They're just not going to be able to play. I've already detailed this, which gives Martin a huge inside track. The rest of the freshmen aren't ready to compete with what is a 6'4", redshirt sophomore quarterback. Comes in, has the intangibles, right? 6'4", 220 from Inglewood, right? Put up a lot of numbers at Inglewood. His career stats passing the football, which are all this year. 1 for 1 against Indiana, 5 yards. Came in late against Oregon after Garbers got hurt. 1 for 4, completed 7 yards, attempted 1 run. And then it was the Penn State game where we saw the greatest look at him, 73%, 167 yards, a touchdown late, a long of 53 yards, but 7 attempts rushing the football, -9 yards. A lot of that because he was pressured in the backfield and sacked and everything. Showcases a lot of athleticism and versatility. And I've been on this pod saying, yes, Garbers is not the most mobile, but he can run. He made the biggest rushing touchdown happen this year for the Bruins and the biggest running play. The ceiling is just higher with Martin. I'm just not sure we would see it now, which is why I've been in the Garbers camp. But now you look at Martin, I am for, in one of these last few games, giving Martin a little bit of a look. I think Garbers is the starting quarterback. It's unique that the Bruins have 2 home games at the end, so you want the kid to start the rivalry game. You want him to get the start for the senior night game against Fresno State. And he knows, having been at UCLA, what that 21 game felt like against Fresno State. But Martin, UCLA has to keep giving top-tier reps to Martin for him to develop to the season's end. And I wonder, as unique as this might be, in recent years, teams have not been able to, the conferences have not been able to fill out all the bowl-eligible teams. What if, in a world where UCLA is 5-7 and the academics are good, those APR scores are good enough, and the Bruins qualify, does UCLA accept a 5-7 bowl bid under Deshaun Foster? I think you do. I think you do, and you go after it, and you give. Say this is more of a hypothetical future. UCLA in a 5-7 year, if they can win 3 more games, get that tough luck loser bowl eligibility bid with the good scores academically. We hope if they're in standing, right? That's what Minnesota did last year. I would want Martin to start that bowl game. I think if UCLA continues to play, keep going Garbers. But the Bruins have a chance to sneak in a series for Martin here and there, not to take away from Garbers. I'm not exactly saying take the starting spots from Garbers, but see where they can sprinkle in Martin and utilize him in different ways for the time going forward, right? Because this is a guy with 2 more years left of eligibility that I am very confident will have, if he stays, and at this moment with what UCLA has coming in, I think will be the fast track to the starter if Eric Bieniemy is still the offensive coordinator next year. If Bieniemy stays for a year or 2 of his 2-year deal, and Deshaun Foster and the UCLA, athletics, they don't get rid of Bieniemy, and the numbers keep continuing to grow week after week, I'm not sure Madden's going to come in there and win that job away from Martin with the complication of the offense. As we've seen, it's taken Garbers and UCLA, 6-7 games, 8-9 weeks, a whole spring ball of installs, fall ball, multiple buys to look good once offensively. Some of that has to do with the offensive line play, some quarterbacking, and a lot of that has to do with the play calling of Bieniemy. But if he stays, Martin has the clear inside track to starting next year. The intangibles, the physical, and I would hope the understanding of the playbook more than any true freshman early enrollee could be, if that's how the 25 quarterbacks, because the Bruins have a couple. They have quite a few 2024 quarterbacks behind Martin. It would be his job. So how can UCLA get a couple more looks while not taking away the opportunities earned by Garbers down the stretch? Maybe it's that 5-7 bowl bid UCLA could be a small opportunity for, although I wonder what that would look like this year with the expanded CFP, a big part of that. taken away from some bowl opportunities. Which makes me think, how can UCLA look heading into 2025? Let's look at that schedule. It's bye week. We're in the back half. How can the Bruins ride some momentum into next year, which will be year 2 under DeShaun Foster? No matter how the Bruins finish, there is a very, very, very low chance that DeShaun Foster is not the coach of the UCLA Bruins in 2025. I know you don't want to hear it. I know a new chancellor will be installed. At this moment, there's a very high chance DeShaun Foster is still there. And I'm not going to call for his job after year 1 with a murderer's row of games to start the season. 4 straight top 13 teams basically at this moment. That's nuts. Just trying to figure out how to coach. It's like boom, 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 boom. What just hit you? All right. It's like maybe you're a boxer and you go out there and you're like, I'm going to go pick out a fight. And you're good or you have opportunity to grow, but you face like 4 legends in their prime right in a row, right? Not that they're all legends, but it's like, oh, that's good. Oh, that's where UCLA's at this year. So what is it looking like going to 2025? Let's talk about it next on Locked On UCLA. You should check out PrizePicks because it's the best play to get real money sports action. Over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less and at least 2 players for up to a shot to win up to $100, 100 times your cash, your game all season long on PrizePicks. Hey, let's check it out. Remember, because PrizePicks, they've invented the flex play. Which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Also, here, let's take a look about PrizePicks because PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off? Who's going to go off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn on your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app, use the code LOCKEDONCollege, you get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Hey, check out PrizePicks. Run your game. All right, here we are with Locked On UCLA, wrapping things up, heading into the 2025 portion of the schedule, right? So this is where UCLA, we're trying to figure out what is this team going to do in, the next season, all right? I talked about, the Garbers versus Martin, more Justyn Martin. This is a guy that's got years of eligibility. Let's remember who still has eligibility in the receiver room for UCLA. Rico Flores Jr. is only a sophomore. Mokiao Otamalala is only a redshirt junior. Quasi Gilmer, a freshman. Yes, J. Michael Sturdivant's been around forever. He's only a redshirt junior. Carter Shaw, who's made some big moments happen, redshirt freshman. Only guy that's leaving from UCLA is the redshirt senior Logan Loya. That's the only guy expected to leave based on an eligibility. Now, NAL, transfer, pro ball, everything, injuries, they all play a role. Only one expected guy leaving the receiver room, which is supposed to be big time. You have Justyn Martin, a redshirt sophomore. The rest of those guys, pretty much all freshmen, other than Nick Billups and the likes of Chase Griffin. Now we take a look for the rest of this team. Yes, you're going to lose a couple of linebackers like Femi Oladejo, Ale Cajo. Where is UCLA losing some guys? Well, hey, you want to look for the likes of, in the secondary, Brian Addison, Devin Kirkwood, KJ Wallace, Kalen Moore, Ramon Henderson. Keep going up and down this list if I can get it going. You've got some young DBs we hope to get some time this year. But, hey, this is a UCLA team that will still have a lot of guys offensively. If we're continue to look, you look at these offensive linemen, right? You've got, you're going to lose Carlin, who's a redshirt senior and such, but Sam Ewan, a guy who stepped in as a center, he's a youngster, redshirt sophomore. You still have DiGiorgio, who's coming in. He's a redshirt junior. Makahele, who's kind of been in and out, right? Redshirt junior. Unigier, he's hurt, and I wonder if he'll get any red shirt or how that's going to work with him, but he's a redshirt senior. And some of these guys, right, 6'6", you got Mark Schroller, Marquise Thorpe-Taylor. You've got a 6'7", Nicky Prongos, who's been getting more time as a redshirt sophomore. Some of these guys that aren't playing, that are freshmen, are big boys. And sometimes with the offensive line, you're not always playing right away. So there are some bigger guys that are beefing up, learning how to block the Eric Bieniemy system. Let's not forget that in the running back room, TJ Harden's only a junior, right? You're only losing TJ Harden. Yes, Berger's been a nice change of pace. You will be losing the long time back in Keegan Jones, but you can have your starting running back return. You've got, I think, what could be a deeper offensive line room if guys bulk up, get bigger, and can handle the Big Ten trenches, but are just a little too young this year. Hopefully, 6'6", 6'7", waits in the wings, and some of these guys could still return next year. And you fix that with a player or two in the portal, some unexpected growth. So you have a quarterback who can return, a running back who can return again, receivers. Tell me if this sounds like the same thing. Yes, the same thing that's happened the last couple of years. You're bringing a lot of returning options, and Martin won't exactly be the highlight returning quarterback option. He will be a guy that started against Penn State, but somebody who's been in the program 4 years and has been in the system for Eric Bieniemy a full year to learn where he can blossom next year. The defense is where it'll be a little bit brutal, right? You're going to lose Oladejo. You're going to lose Cajo, right? John Vaughn's redshirt senior. I haven't really talked about him all that much this year. Carson Schlesinger, redshirt junior, unless he wants to go test all that. Your punter's returning, your kicker's returning, so special teams should be an important part, but the defense is going to take a big hit unless UCLA hits the portal significantly and steals back some talent from SC, steals some guys from the Big Ten, hits the portal, and expects some freshman talent to develop. Here's what the schedule looks like in 2025. I think it's a lot more manageable than it was in 24. You play Utah and the 50th year head quarterback in Cam Rising if he returns, or if they go somewhere else. And if they go somewhere else, UCLA at home at a season opener, I'd like to say they could handle Utah next year, regardless of who's the quarterback, if it's Rising for his 20th year or not. Then you go to UNLV. Well, UNLV was really good this year, and then they had some quarterback drama. I don't know what they're looking like next year. I'd like to hope UCLA could go win that one in Allegiant Stadium. 3, then you go play New Mexico at home. And while UNLV could be very good off of the heels of this year, Utah, well-coached New Mexico, you never want to doubt a random New Mexico Lobo team. You look at the non-conference this year, Hawaii, okay, at LSU. And then you play Fresno State, who's been a thorn in UCLA's side. Last year, the week 2 or the week 3 game was Indiana. Yeah, I think it's a little bit easier when the only road trip in the first 3 weeks of the season is a hop, skip, and a jump to Vegas. All right? Vegas. Easy for UCLA when it comes to travel. Then, what UCLA has in Big Ten play. Some tough road trips, including the SC game on the road. You've got Ohio State, which still has to replenish its talent with a huge NIL thing. But as we saw, Michigan went from national champion to bust a little bit. I'm not sure if Ryan Day is on the hot seat, how that'll look. Will Howard is the senior, but they should have a little bit of talent with those young crop of receivers if they can find a quarterback that can throw them the ball consistently in 25 and beyond. So that's at Columbus. You go to the makeshift stadium at Northwestern. You go to Michigan State. And after seeing what Curt Cignetti and Indiana did to UCLA in the Rose Bowl, the Bruins have something to prove in Bloomington on the gridiron. Not to say that Indiana won't be as good next year, but they're going to have a lot of moving parts. I just won't doubt Cignetti. At home, you've got Maryland. You host Nebraska. You host Penn State. You host Washington. The home games will have swarms of fans, in my mind. You bring in Penn State. You bring in Nebraska. Those will be fun. Utah, Washington, those are some big name programs coming in. And then I wonder what I wonder what Maryland will bring to town. I think UCLA can handle the 25 schedule. I'm not saying they're going to go to the CFP, but after what they've dealt with this year, the road games seemingly a little bit more manageable, but at an 18-team Big Ten, somebody is going to go back and forth. This team and these programs just go beat each other up. I'm not afraid after seeing 4 straight top 13 teams in a row. Number 1 in the country, number 3 in the country, number 9 or whatever LSU's in the country. Indiana should be a top 10 team where game day is going this week. So the hype is real. And UCLA, again, still has talent returning next year. It's developing the O-lineman for Akaika Malloy, finding the defense that was not recruited previously, because it's how hard it was under Chip Kelly, and developing the secondary. This year was a plug and play, and I think the defense might crater next year. That is what we're looking for next year for UCLA. It'll be interesting, kind of looking ahead in 24, looking at the quarterback situation, looking at 2025, but taking the, getting the Utahs in this schedule, removing the good old SEC teams that were expected to be on the schedule. Cool. That could be an opportunity for UCLA to start off the season much better in year 2 under DESHAUN Foster and, quote unquote, foster some goodwill moving forward. And that's what UCLA has been showing at practice apparently for this year in bye week number 2. And I like to see them go on a big run at the end of the season. So get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.